Some sentences, like this one, have a verb and subject. These are simple sentences. Now, look closely at this sentence. Sarah meets Kim and they walk to Kim's house. It can be broken up as two simple sentences where each makes complete sense on its own. Notice that both parts of the sentence are joined together by a conjunction. Such a sentence is a compound sentence. Let's say Sarah finds a lonely pup at the side of the street. Sarah takes the pup home as the pup is separated from its family. Now, if we break up this sentence, you will see that one part of the sentence is dependent on the other to complete its meaning. Such a sentence is called a complex sentence. Let's learn about each of these types of sentences. Let's take a look at some rules to help us identify whether a sentence is simple, compound, or complex. A simple sentence contains one independent clause and makes complete sense. When we say that a simple sentence is an independent clause, we mean that it has a verb and a subject and makes complete sense on its own. A simple sentence may also have other elements such as objects or phrases that complete or improve the meaning of the sentence. Notice that this sentence uses a conjunction, yet it is a simple sentence. That's because the conjunction here connects two subjects and not independent clauses in the sentence. Here are a few more simple sentences. A compound sentence contains two independent clauses, usually joined by a coordinating conjunction. As you can see, this sentence has two independent clauses. Each independent clause makes complete sense on its own. These clauses are joined by a coordinating conjunction to make a compound sentence. Coordinating conjunctions, such as the ones listed here, are usually used to join two or more simple sentences into a compound sentence. Compound sentences can also be formed by using correlative conjunctions. For example, if we remove the correlative conjunctions in this sentence, we can break up the sentence into two simple sentences. These are some examples of correlative conjunctions. Here are a few examples of compound sentences. All independent clauses in a compound sentence are of equal importance. Read this sentence. You see that both the independent clauses are equally important, don't you? Here, in each compound sentence, both the independent clauses contribute equally to the meaning of the sentence. A complex sentence contains an independent clause and one or more dependent clauses joined by a subordinating conjunction. An independent clause is like a railway engine. It can stand on its own. A dependent clause is like a carriage. It depends on the independent clause to complete its meaning. In a complex sentence, a dependent clause is attached to an independent clause using subordinating conjunctions. Look at this example. Here, they served us ice cream is the independent clause because it makes complete sense by itself. After we finished our lunch is the dependent clause. If you just read the dependent clause by itself, it makes no sense. It depends on the independent clause to complete the meaning. Notice that the dependent clause is joined to the independent clause using a subordinating conjunction. Subordinating conjunctions introduce the dependent clause in a complex sentence. A dependent clause can also be attached to the independent clause using relative pronouns such as who, which, and that. Sometimes a dependent clause comes before the independent clause. When a complex sentence begins with a dependent clause, you place a comma after the dependent clause. However, when the dependent clause appears after the independent clause, you needn't use a comma. Here are some examples of complex sentences. In a complex sentence, the idea in the dependent clause is presented as less important than the idea in the independent clause. Read these two complex sentences. In the first one, the idea, the food was spicy, is presented as less important than the idea, the food was tasty. Now, in the second sentence, the idea that the food was tasty is presented as less important or subordinate to the idea that the food was spicy. Here are a few more examples of complex sentences. Observe that the idea in the dependent clause is presented as less important than the idea in the independent clause. Let's see how simple, compound,